Okay, folks. This is our first sort of lecture discussion on The Murder Complex, a novel by Lindsay Cummings. And I'm going to just kind of frame it up for us today. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter video. By shorter, I mean probably 20, 30 minutes. The second part of our discussion, as you'll check on the syllabus, is going to be on Monday. Okay, the second lecture and discussion on Monday. That's going to be a little bit longer. It might be more than one video because I don't like to do more than about a 20-minute video if I can help it. Okay, so I just want to get us started and get it framed for us and get us going in the right direction. Also, to make sure that Canvas is actually working. I'm trying out some things on Canvas I haven't had a chance to learn about yet, particularly the discussion boards, and see how that goes. So let's give it a go. We're going to start off with several questions that I want us to kind of explore and to help frame our discussion of the novel. One would be, why would dystopian fiction appeal to adolescents? This is a novel that is clearly and I won't say exclusively, but primarily for adolescents. This is, I mean, it's YA fiction, young adult fiction, young adolescent, whatever you want to say, young adult fiction, young adolescent fiction. And what we're talking about is probably a target group of between, say, the ages of like tweens, like 11, 12, all the way up to like 17, 18, something like that. That's usually the target age for this particular subgenre. So the question I have, and we're going to explore the YA attributes of it as well. But the question I have is, why would dystopian fiction appeal to adolescents? What's in it for them? I mean, it seems kind of dark and foreboding and sometimes depressing or scary. Why would they be attracted to it? The second question is, how do YA dystopian novels differ from those aimed at adults? So we've read a couple so far that were really aimed at adults. And this is our first foray into a novel that is geared towards a younger audience. Now, you need to make sure that you read a novel that is a YA novel with a different set of standards than you would read, say, adult fiction. Okay? So if you're reading it and saying, gee, this seems, sort of geared towards younger, yeah, it is. Okay? And so the plots and the characterization and all those things are going to be a little bit different than what it would be in, something for people in their 30s, 40s, what have you. So be aware of that. But what we want to look at is how do these types of novels differ from those aimed at adults? What's in them that's not in stuff for adults? What's not in them that would be in stuff for adults? So A Handmaid's Tale, very different type of dystopian novel, not something that would be something you would aim at 12-year-olds, right? Okay, so there are going to be some really stark, obvious differences, but we want to take a look at what's in these primarily and say what's in here that wouldn't be in something that's geared more towards adults. What are the fine lines, I use that in quotation marks, that must be observed when writing this kind of material for youth? Okay, so, a dystopian world is not a happy thing, right? And so what is, they deal with very uncomfortable questions, very uncomfortable scenarios, sometimes lots of violence. This one has a lot of violence in it. But it's how that violence is depicted. It's how that sort of thing is framed, where the author has to be aware of certain lines that you need to be careful in crossing when you're pitching this to a younger group. Also, the interest level of the younger group. I mean, you're not going to see what you see in A Handmaid's Tale in this novel, because the whole issue of sexuality is one that you have to ask to an incredibly young audience. Is that even of interest, right? But a romantic interest, well, yeah, maybe, right? Obviously, there's going to be one here. So the fourth question, what elements exist in this subgenre that are different or similar to mainstream dystopian fiction, right? So one is about the age group. The other is, what are the elements that exist that differ from the mainstream dystopian fiction, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get on into it in the course of both this lecture and the one on Monday. A little word about the author. That's her up there, Lindsay Cummings. She's, as I said, she's a former neighbor of mine. She lived right across the street, and when we first moved into our place up here in Valley View, and she and her husband lived there with her husband's parents for a number of years. Now they have their own home. I think they live in Pilot Point. I think that's true. She's an animal lover, absolutely loved it. She got started as a writer. This is her first novel, okay? and she followed it up with a sequel, but she has done really a lot of sci-fi fantasy stuff after this. She has not really spent a lot of the rest of her writing in this particular genre. She just got started in this genre, and the way she did, as she tells it in her life story, is that she developed a particular, I think it was Guillain-Barré disease, where she had a real problem while she was, just as she was starting college. She was exhausted all the time. She couldn't recover. That particular disease will just drain you. You have no energy. You have no ability to get up and move around. And so I believe that's what she said. She had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and she turned a lot to reading and writing to cope with it. And she had read The Hunger Games, as I'm sure all of you guys have. That's the next novel up. And was inspired to write this very first kind of novice novel, if you will. So let's don't judge it too harshly. It's the very first one. She got it published. She got the same publisher, HarperCollins, that Collins got for the Hunger Games. And so it's her very first foray into it. And you're going to see some things where you say, I like this. This has a lot of promise. You're going to see some things where you say, well, this should have been a little bit better, but cut her some slack on it. She wrote it when she was probably the same age as most of you guys, and as her first foray into it. So we're going to kind of pick through it and see what we see. But she's a very interesting writer. She's sort of geared off in towards some other types of genres instead of the dystopian since then. So let's take a look at the appeal for YA readers, okay? So what is the appeal of dystopian fiction for young adult readers or young adolescent readers? I would submit to you, and I want you to think about this as we get a little bit more deeply into the novel with the next lecture on Monday, is that it gives young adults, and we're talking again 11 to 18, whatever, pick the numbers, an opportunity to explore other possible worlds. So I would submit that, when we raise children, we like to give them sort of a safe and nurturing world, and it's a world that we design and that we present to them and we give to them as we're ready to, right? It's kind of a prepackaged world we give to little kids, right? One that we say to them, well, this is reality, this is truth, this is how the world works. And it's only sort of slowly, gradually where we begin to, ideally, introduce them to the fact that the world isn't always a wonderful place and people aren't always the most wonderful things. The harsh realities are under, at least the way the norms that we have for raising kids these days, is something that we want to be able to ease them into. This type of genre gives them a world that is a dysfunctional world, a dystopian world, and gives them a chance to explore things in a what-if fashion. Well, what if the world that mom and dad and the rest of society tells me is the way that, is reality? What if it's not? Or what if it goes wrong? Right? So it gives them the opportunity to explore other possible worlds beyond the safe one that they've been given and to ask a lot of what-if questions. It's also rebellious and subversive. It questions the types of norms and institutions that older generations have established for them. So we raise children and we say, this is the way you're supposed to behave. This is what you're supposed to do. This is your duty. This is how life is supposed to be. And it gives them an opportunity sort of vicariously through the text to explore what it would be like to rebel against that, what it would be like to be subversive. What if the things your parents are telling you aren't the right things to do, that you should do something different, right? Your mom and dad they're trying to hold you back, and you want to rebel against that and do the thing that you know is right in your heart, but mom and dad, darn them, they just don't understand, right? So there's an element there of sort of rebelliousness and subversiveness. Parents are frequently not depicted in a terribly flattering fashion. They either don't understand us, or they're stupid, or right? So it's that age that they're getting into, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age, where they begin to say, I want to be my own person, and I want to establish my own identity, and maybe everything that exists, school and all the rules and stuff, maybe I want to question that and challenge that and critique that. And that it's a time in your life where you become aware of the fact that the world that has been given to you, that adults have created, has lots of problems in it. And the novel gives you a chance to see what those problems are and to live through the characters, that questioning and that rebelliousness. It's also gives those readers a world with open-ended possibilities for relationships, including romantic ones. Now, I'm not going to say that an 11-year-old has the same sort of interest in romantic relationships as, a 20-year-old. Okay, I got it. But they're beginning to sort of think about those kinds of things at that age, and it's not unusual for them to sort of say, well, maybe it's not like the Disney movies. Maybe, the princess and the prince and all of this kind of stuff. Maybe there's more possible relationships, and there's the other characters have a little bit more shading and color to them than stick figures types of things. And the complexities of relationships begin to emerge. Now, you and I reading this aren't going to see terribly complex relationships here. It's not like something from, a William Faulkner novel or Shakespeare, or something of that nature. But it is the beginnings of young people being able to recognize that there's more than one type of relationship. And frequently the tension, as we'll see with the Hunger Games, or that you could see with Divergent or any of these others in this genre, the tension is between choosing a romantic interest, one of them over the other, both of whom are usually really hot guys, and we just don't know, which one do I choose kind of thing. You and I, as adults, or younger adults, college-age students, obviously, look at that and say, rather simplistic. But hey, a person has to start somewhere, right? Thinking about these kinds of things. And so, the complexity of relationships. Do I love this person? Do I like this person? How do I like this person? Could this be something other than what, et cetera, and so on. They've outgrown playmates on the playground, right? And it also allows the reader to envision herself or himself as an ideal self, as a heroic figure, as someone who lives and breathes, again, through, identifying with the main character or characters, what their responses would be to trying and testing situations. How would I respond? And so you're kind of living through that character and rooting for that character, or, you're constantly thinking, what would I do? Or I'd like to be like this person, or this is how I would handle that kind of scenario. And it allows them to play out in their mind an ideal self, or envision an ideal self that is consistent with whatever their value system is. So this is, so you at first blush, you're saying, why in the world would anybody present dystopian fiction to tweens and early teens? And the answer is, well, there's a lot there for that. How do you explain the incredible success of the Hunger Games if it weren't for the fact that there's something in there appealing to that age group? Okay, so as an overview with some of the elements, let's take a look at it. Our three main protagonists, obviously, are Meadow, Talon, and Zephyr. Of course, there are the family members that each of them has, or the other associates that each of them run into. The Meadow's family is really important. And Zephyr, of course, is a ward, meaning a ward of the state. And as a result, he's an orphan, and these are taken in, and Meadow has to go through these different competitions and challenges to be able to do what she does, because she's going to be then in charge of rations. There's a whole group of those people. So everybody in the society has a prescribed role, okay? And it's a highly structured and controlled society of the future. It's run by the Initiative, and we're not told the entire history of this until much later in the novel, of course, where the big reveal will start to take place, and yet all the pieces will fall in together. This is very, very typical of a novel like this. You're kind of kept in suspense until then. That's de rigueur. But the Initiative, sometime in the past, created this world, walled it off, right? And you can't go beyond the perimeter without some sort of very special permission. And there are the dark times, and then there's, it's sundown. You're not supposed to be out because there are these murders that take place, and Nobody really knows what's going on with that or why that is. But we do know that food and survival are essential, and it is a sealed or contained world. So the importance of space and of place in the novel, it can't be understated. So there are these different places: the graveyard, the shallows, the perimeter, the different places where people go and see it escapes me right now, the hall there of the people who have died, the dome, the catalog building, the catalog dome building, and so there are these different places that are important, both and they have boundaries, both physical and symbolic, right? This is a place where you go when you do X. This is a place where you don't go unless you do Y, okay? So incredible structure. Even the physical space is highly structured, because what the author is doing is creating a very self-contained world, and with rules, okay? And again, this is, young adolescent. What do we know about young adolescents? They're all about, well, what are the rules, and what should the rules be, and which rules are bad rules, and which rules do I no longer want to abide by because I'm getting tired of doing that. I'm becoming my own young person here, and I'm going to question those rules, and I'm going to question those spaces and those authority figures and that kind of thing, you see? Now, we also, just like a previous novel we dealt with, The Mandibles, we have multiple narrative voices here. And so we have to ask, does it work, right? So we're able, it's got pros and cons, doesn't it? It's got the pro of, hey, I get to hear different voices, and I get to know those characters through their own words a little bit more, and I get to see what their perspective is of the other individuals. But you do give up something with a third-person objective narrator, omniscient narrator, because that would allow us to view the thoughts and feelings and whatnot of characters that are unspoken. So, to as great an extent, I should say. The main objective of the novel in this kind of genre is to understand and uncover the meaning of the system. That's the mystery. How and why it exists. Why is the world that is created here inside the perimeter, why is it the way it is? How did it get that way? What's going on? Who's in charge? Who is pulling the puppet strings out of sight? Okay, who's behind the curtain? Okay, and what is the meaning of that system? That too is very essential to young adult fiction, because what are we trying to do when we're 12, 14, 15, 16, 17 years of age? We're trying to figure out, why is the world the way it is? Why is it so unfair? Why are we constantly being told what to do? When do I get to be my own person? Who made this world the way it is? And why'd they make it that way? And isn't there a better way to live? Those kinds of questions get uncovered in a YA dystopian novel like this one, and we'll see how that is as we go on. Okay, so I'm going to get close to wrapping this up, and I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes here being able to give you the what to do next. Okay, so what you need to do is, by midnight tonight, which is on the 25th of March, I need you to send the answer to these quiz questions. You can pause the video and just type them up. Send them to me in my Yahoo account, my Yahoo email. Don't send them to TW. Please don't send them through Canvas, because something glitchy is going on with Canvas, and I'm not always getting those emails in my TW account. Don't know why. But if you'll send it to alfredlitton@yahoo.com, then I'll get it. Okay? The first quiz question is, what is a ward? Why are they called that? Second quiz question is, what are nanites and why are they important? Please answer both parts of these questions. Third, what item does Meadow carry with her to remind her of her mother? And if you want a bonus question, the Shallows were once known as a specific place in Florida. What place was that? Okay, that's revealed fairly early on in the novel. And you say, oh, okay, now I know what that place was before they called it the Shallows, okay? So you want to send that to me by midnight tonight to my Yahoo account, my Yahoo email account, and I have posted, fingers crossed that it actually works because I haven't used this before on Canvas, a discussion prompt for this first roughly half of the novel. You will see that in Canvas in the discussion section, just go on in there. Now, there's something goofy about Canvas. They've never been able to fix this. This is a cross-listed class, so I have some people taking it for English credit, some people taking it for Women's Studies credit, and so they've never been able to combine everybody in the class into a single class. So they've still got it segregated out by the people who are in the English section and the people who are in the Women's Studies section, and so I've had to create just two different discussion sections, but it's the same topic you'll see in there. So there aren't a whole lot of people, but please answer that as fully as possible. Give your thoughts. If you want to respond to people's thoughts, that's fine. You can do that, but I don't expect that at this point. I just want a nice, full consideration on your part of that discussion topic or prompt, and the more you can refer to specific incidents or examples from the text, the better. But give a nice full sort of consideration to it. Show me that you've thought about what we're talking about here and that you're able to tie that topic to specifics in the text. Okay? That also needs to be concluded by midnight tonight, if you would please. All right? So here we go. I'm going to send out an email letting you guys know that all this is ready, and my apologies for not getting it up a little bit sooner today, but it takes me a little longer than I thought. Internet's kind of slow because everybody's on it watching Netflix instead of doing homework, I'm sure. All right? So, going to do this. I'll have a little bit of an update by email about graded material when I get all that put up, and give you some further information about that. All right? Give me an email if you have some questions or problems.